My wife had a secret boyfriend for 2 years while I was deploying overseas. So I took everything and left, her begging on her knees. I'm a 32-year-old soldier. And for the past 6 years, I thought I had the kind of marriage people envied. The kind built on love, trust, and promises whispered late at night. When I was first deployed overseas, I clung to those promises like a lifeline. My wife swore she'd wait for me no matter how long, no matter how hard. Forever, she said. And I believed her with every part of me. Life on deployment is brutal in ways people don't talk about. The desert heat swallowing you whole, the endless drills, the quiet nights where your thoughts are louder than gunfire. I'd sit on my bunk after missions, scribbling letters by flashlight, pouring everything into words I prayed would reach her heart. Every paycheck I earned, I wired home. I wanted her comfortable, safe, never lacking for anything. That thought alone kept me going when my body screamed for rest. Our phone calls were my anchor. No matter how short or broken the connection, I lived for the sound of her voice. I'd tell her, "You're my reason for coming home." And she'd always answer, "I'll be here," waiting, even when doubts crept in the jokes from other guys about what their wives might be doing. Push them aside. Not her. Not my wife. At night, I imagined our future. Building a family, buying a house, and finally being done with the endless sand and gunmetal skies. I'd picture her smile, her hand in mine, and it gave me strength I didn't think I had. Looking back, I realized I was holding on to an image, one I desperately needed to believe in. Because without that belief, the silence between her calls might have broken me. And maybe I should have listened closer to that silence. I should have noticed the cracks before I ever left. A few weeks before deployment, she started using words I'd never heard from her before, like space and me time. At first, I brushed it off. We'd been together for years, married for 6. Maybe she just needed a breather. But there was a sharpness in her voice when she said it. Like I was suddenly a burden instead of her partner. She began hanging out with new people I didn't really know, coworkers. Gym, friends, neighbors I'd never met. Whenever I asked about them, she'd get defensive. "Don't you trust me?" She'd snap, eyes narrowed like I'd accused her of something. I'd backpedal every time, assuring her it wasn't that. I just wanted to know who she was spending so much time with. She'd roll her eyes and say, "You're overthinking." Phone calls became shorter too. I'd call after work, and she'd answer with a rushed, "Hey, can I call you back?" "I'm busy." Sometimes she wouldn't call back at all. When I pressed, she'd say, "Work ran late," or "I was exhausted." I told myself she was just adjusting, trying to keep herself busy so she wouldn't drown in loneliness while I was gone. The night before I left, I remember holding her hand and telling her how scared I was to be away from her. She pulled back slightly, just enough that I felt it in my chest. "You'll be fine," she said quickly, her eyes darting away. It wasn't cruel, it was casual, almost dismissive. But it lingered with me. I convinced myself I was imagining things, that the stress of leaving was making me paranoid. My gut screamed at me that something was wrong, but I silenced it with the thought, "She loves you." She promised forever. And yet, sometimes when the phone went quiet, I swear I could hear the lies hiding in the silence. Deployment strips you down to nothing. You start counting time by what you miss instead of what you have. Birthdays, anniversaries, even stupid things like Sunday morning coffee runs. I missed them all. The only thing I wanted was to hear her voice at the end of those endless, sand-choked days. But even that began to fade at first. She'd text me little updates, "Made pasta tonight," or "Thinking of you." Then it turned into one-line replies. Eventually, whole days passed without a word. Video calls became rare, and when they did happen, the connection wasn't the only thing cutting out. Her eyes never met the camera, and she always seemed to be in a rush. "Sorry, babe. I have to go work early tomorrow." Click, silence. The guys around me joked constantly about what their wives or girlfriends might be doing back home. Bet she's got some guy warming your side of the bed. They'd laugh over poker. I'd force a smile, but inside, I bristled. I swore to myself, not her. Not my wife. She's not like that. I needed to believe that, because if I didn't, what the hell was I fighting for? But then came the missed anniversary. I'd been counting down to it, holding on to the hope of just one long call where we could pretend, even for a few minutes, that the world wasn't pulling us apart. Instead, I got nothing. No text, no voicemail. Just silence so loud it felt like betrayal in itself. I tried to bury it under duty, under the sound of boots on gravel and gunfire in the distance. But every night when I lay down, the doubt whispered louder. What if they're right? What if she's not mine anymore? And deep down, I was terrified that the silence already held the answer. It was one of those rare nights when the Wi-Fi gods decided to be kind. And I actually got a clear video call through. She looked good, hair done, makeup on, wearing a new top I hadn't seen before. For a second, I felt normal again, like we were just a married couple catching up after a long day instead of a world apart. We were talking about random things, her job, the neighbors, even what she had for dinner when it happened. She laughed at something I said, leaned back, and said, "Oh, you're so funny, Chris." My stomach dropped. Chris? My name isn't Chris. There was this half-second of silence where her eyes widened, and I knew she realized what she'd just said. Then she chuckled nervously, waving her hand like it was nothing. "Oh my God, I'm so tired I meant you, babe." Chris is just this guy at work. He cracks dumb jokes all the time. Guess it slipped out. I forced a laugh, trying not to sound rattled. Huh. Must have been some joke if you're still thinking about him. Her smile tightened, and she shook her head quickly. No, seriously, it's nothing. Don't be weird. But the way she glanced off screen, biting her lip, stuck in my head. We moved on, talking about safer topics, but the vibe had shifted. Every pause in conversation stretched longer than it should have. Her eyes wouldn't linger on me, like she was afraid I'd see something written across her face. When the call ended, she blew me a kiss, but even through the screen, it felt rehearsed. That night, lying in my bunk, I replayed it over and over. The way she said his name. The way she brushed it off too quickly. I told myself I was overreacting. But deep down, I knew. That slip wasn't nothing. It was the first crack in the story I'd built my entire life around. After 2 years overseas, I finally came home. I didn't tell her the exact date because I wanted it to be special, one of those movie moments where the ex-soldier walks through the door and the wife runs into his arms crying with joy. I'd pictured it 100 times on restless nights. Rehearsed the way I'd drop my duffel bag. The way I'd hold her like I'd never let go. It was late when I pulled into our driveway. The porch light was on, glowing soft and warm like it always did. But right there in front of me sat a car I didn't recognize as sleek. Newer model, nothing like the old beat-up sedan she drove. My stomach twisted, but I told myself maybe a friend was over. Maybe her brother stopped by. Anything but the storm my gut was already screaming about. I climbed the steps quietly, my boots barely making a sound. When I pushed open the door, the first thing I noticed was a pair of men's shoes neatly placed by the mat. Not sneakers, not boots-dress shoes, shiny, polished. The kind of shoes a man wears when he wants to impress. The sound hit me next. Laughter. Her laughter. But it wasn't the tired, distracted chuckle she'd given me over the phone. It was light, full, the kind of laugh that used to belong to us. It floated down the staircase, mingling with a deeper voice I didn't recognize. My chest felt like it caved in. Every letter I'd written, every lonely night, every promise replayed in my head, and here I was. Standing in my own house like a stranger. I gripped the railing, my pulse pounding in my ears. I wanted to believe there was an explanation. I wanted to believe I hadn't just walked back into a life built on lies. But with every step I took toward that sound, the truth felt closer, heavier, impossible to ignore. And upstairs, behind that door, my perfect marriage was about to collapse. I don't even remember pushing the door open. I just remember the sound. The creak of the hinges, her sharp scream, the crash of something hitting the floor. And there they were. My wife, scrambling to cover herself with the sheets. And a man I'd never seen before, half naked, fumbling to grab his pants from the floor. For a moment, the world slowed. My vision tunneled. I'd spent years in war zones, seen men bleed out in the dirt, but nothing had ever gutted me like the sight of her in our bed with someone else. The bed I'd dreamed of coming home to. What the hell is this? My voice came out raw, shaking. She gasped, eyes wide with panic. Then held up her hand like I was the one who'd done something wrong. Wait, please. It's not what it looks like. The guy muttered something under his breath, shoving his shoes on, avoiding my eyes as he bolted past me like a coward. I barely noticed him. I couldn't look away from her. Not what it looks like. I snapped, my fists trembling at my sides. You're in our bed with another man. How long, huh? How long has this been going on while I was out there fighting, bleeding, and sending you every damn cent I made? Her voice cracked, desperate. It just happened. I was lonely. Please, don't overreact. It doesn't mean anything. Overreact. She used that word, like catching my wife cheating in my own house was a minor inconvenience. Like my heart wasn't being ripped out of my chest right there on the carpet. I staggered back, suddenly struggling to breathe. My hands shook, my throat burned. And every letter I'd written her, every call she'd cut short, every excuse, it all came crashing down on me at once, and standing there, in that room that used to mean home, I realized something I could never unsee. The woman I trusted with my life had already buried our marriage long before I opened that door. I barely had time to catch my breath before the guy, her boyfriend, I guess, came back into the hallway to grab his jacket. This time, though, he didn't look guilty. He looked smug. He smirked at me like he'd won something that belonged to him. Don't act surprised, man, he said casually, slipping his arms into his sleeves. We've been together for almost 2 years. She was mine while you were off playing hero overseas. His words cut sharper than any blade. 2 years. That meant from almost the day I left, she'd been living a double life. While I was out there sweating in the desert, praying to make it home alive, she was here smiling in someone else's arms, laughing at someone else's jokes, giving away everything I thought was sacred between us. I looked at her, waiting, begging for her to deny it. But she just sat there, clutching the sheets to her chest, tears rolling down her face. No denial, no fight. Just silence that confirmed everything. You bastard, I hissed, but the guy only laughed. Everybody knew. Man, you were the only one in the dark. We went to restaurants, parties, hell, we even spent weekends away. And you never had a clue. Later, my friends from back home would confirm it. They'd seen her out with him more than once at the mall, at bars, even holding hands in broad daylight. They never told me because they didn't want to ruin my focus while I was deployed. So I'd been the fool writing letters, sending money, dreaming of a future with a woman who already belonged to someone else. That was the part that gutted me more than the cheating itself. This wasn't some drunken one-night mistake, some fleeting lapse in judgment. This was years. A whole second life she built behind my back. And in that moment, I realized the truth wasn't just betrayal, it was humiliation. Everyone knew but me. I walked out of that house like a ghost. My duffel bag still sat by the front door, but I couldn't bring myself to touch it. I just left. My boots carried me down the street without direction until I finally called a buddy from my unit who lived nearby. He didn't ask questions, just opened his door, handed me a beer, and gave me his couch. That first night, I didn't sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling while the images replayed in my head on a sickening loop. Her laughter, his smug grin, the way she didn't deny it. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their bodies tangled in sheets that used to mean home to me. It was torture, the kind you can't escape because it lives under your skin. Days blurred. I'd sit in silence, clutching my phone, debating whether to call her. Part of me, some pathetic part, wanted to hear her voice, to hear her say she was sorry, to believe it could somehow be fixed. 6 years of marriage doesn't just vanish overnight, no matter how much you want it to. But then I'd remember. The smirk on his face, the sound of her begging me not to overreact, and the rage would burn through me all over again. Forgiveness felt impossible when every detail was carved into my mind like a scar. I blamed myself, too. Maybe I shouldn't have ignored the signs. Maybe I should have visited home more, written less, called more. I twisted myself into knots, trying to figure out what I could have done differently. The truth, though the one that stung the most, was that none of it would have mattered. She made her choice, and lying there in the dark on someone else's couch, hollowed out and shaking, I knew I was at my lowest. The man who left for war wasn't the same man who came home. A few days into staying at my buddy's place, finally opened my laptop. I hadn't wanted to. I knew looking at bank records and bills would only remind me of the life I thought I had. But something in me snapped. I needed to see what she'd been doing with all the money I'd been wiring home. At first, the statements looked normal: utilities, groceries, the mortgage. But then I saw charges that didn't make sense. Weekend hotel stays in towns hours away from home. Expensive restaurant tabs that didn't match the ramen and frozen pizza stories she fed me on our calls. Jewelry stores. Designer clothes. Thousands gone, and not a single purchase tied to me. The more I scrolled, the worse it got. Monthly payments for an apartment I didn't know about. I traced the address and felt my stomach turn. It wasn't hers. It was his. She had been using my military paychecks to fund her boyfriend's life. My sacrifice, my blood, and sweat. Keeping another man comfortable while I slept on sandbags and ate Marie's, I slammed the laptop shut. A tea. But it didn't silence the betrayal screaming in my head. This wasn't just infidelity anymore. It wasn't loneliness or a mistake. It was theft. It was manipulation. She hadn't only cheated on me, she had bled me dry to build her secret double life. Suddenly, every letter I wrote, every dollar I sent, felt like I'd been handing her the tools to destroy me. I wasn't just betrayed, I was exploited, used, played like a fool while she and her boyfriend toasted to vacations and laughed. In the apartment I paid for. That realization hit harder than catching them in bed. Because cheating breaks the heart. But stealing years of your life, your money, your trust, that breaks the soul. And for the first time since I came home, the rage began to burn hotter than the grief. I could have gone back to that house and burned it all down with words and rage. But something inside me shifted. Exploding on her would, given her power, made me the angry, unstable husband she could twist into her story. No, if she wanted war, I'd fight it on paper. Quiet, cold, permanent. The next morning, I walked into a lawyer's office with a folder under my arm and fire in my veins. I laid it all out: the affair, the 2 years of lies, the bank records, the apartment lease I'd been paying for without knowing it. The lawyer didn't even blink. He'd seen plenty of cheating spouses before, but when I showed him the financial trail, his eyebrows shot up. "She's not just unfaithful," he said. She's criminally reckless. We can bury her with this. That's when the plan began. I reached out to friends back home, the ones who'd whispered they'd seen her around with another man. This time, I asked for proof. Within hours, screenshots of Facebook photos, tagged locations, and casual bar sightings filled my inbox. One friend even had a video her kissing him at a party, plain as day. Another sent me texts she'd mistakenly sent to the wrong group chat, talking about weekends away with Chris. Every shred of evidence stacked higher against her. Each piece felt like reclaiming something she'd stolen from me. My dignity, my power, my future. I wasn't just the betrayed husband anymore. Was the man building the case that would strip her of everything she thought she could take. I sat alone that night, staring at the pile of proof, and for the first time since walking in on them, I felt steady, calm, because this wasn't going to end in screaming matches or begging. This was going to end in court, with her watching everything she built on my back collapse around. Her and I was going to make damn sure she felt it. I'll never forget the look on her face when I showed up at the house, not with flowers, not with forgiveness, but with an envelope in my hand. She opened the door, her smile flickering like she thought maybe I'd come back to talk, to patch things up. But when I handed her the divorce papers, her entire body froze. What? What is this? She whispered, staring at the pages like they were written in another language. It's over, I said flatly. Sign them. You've taken enough from me. Her boyfriend was there too, leaning against the counter like he belonged in my home. His smug grin faltered the moment he realized what was happening. She turned to him, wide-eyed, panicked. Chris, say something. Tell him this doesn't mean anything. But he just shook his head, backing toward the door. Nah, I'm not getting dragged into this mess. You're on your own. And just like that, the man she'd sacrificed our marriage for left her standing in the wreckage. She broke then. Tears poured down her face as she clutched at my arm. Please, don't do this. I was confused. I was lonely. You were gone so long. I pulled back, her touch burning like acid. Lonely doesn't explain 2 years of lies. Lonely doesn't explain stealing my money to play house with another man. You knew exactly what you were doing. Her sobs filled the kitchen. But for once, I didn't crumble. For once, the power wasn't in her hands. It was in mine. I watched her fall apart, watched the mask slip off completely, and I realized I wasn't the broken one anymore. For the first time since I stepped off that plane, I felt the shift. The balance of power had swung back to me, and she knew it too. The divorce went through faster than I expected. With the evidence I had, she didn't stand a chance. The lawyer made sure everything she'd tried to take from me came back tenfold. The house was mine. The savings accounts, mine. Even the dog she swore was her baby stayed with me, tail wagging like he knew he was finally safe. She walked away with nothing but the clothes on her back and the debt she'd racked up chasing her fantasy life. Months passed. I rebuilt. Slowly, painfully, but I rebuilt. I painted the house the way I always wanted, replaced the sheets that used to haunt me, and started breathing again. Nights were quiet, but for the first time, they were peaceful. Then one evening, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find her standing there, makeup smeared, clothes worn, hair tangled. She dropped to her knees right on my porch, clutching my legs like a drowning woman. Please, she sobbed. I made a mistake. I'll do anything to fix it. Just give me one more chance. Her words used to hold power over me. They used to twist me into knots. But standing there, watching the woman who once broke me reduced to begging on the floor, I felt nothing. No love, no hate. Just clarity. I gently pulled my leg free, met her tear-filled eyes, and said, "You already had your chance. And you destroyed it." Then I closed the door. Not with anger, Not with drama, just with finality. On the other side, her cries faded into the night, but inside, I felt lighter than I had in years. I didn't just protect my house or my bank account. I protected my peace. I lost a wife, yes. But what I gained was worth so much more: freedom, dignity, and the strength to never let anyone break me like that again.